exploring how trauma shapes us, how we survive it, and how, with support, we can transform it. Stay with us. Welcome to Five Flavors of Happiness, where we explore meaning, healing, identity, resilience, and what it truly takes to become whole. If you're a part of this community, thank you so much for being here. And if you're new, I'm so glad you found us. If you're drawn to conversations like this, subscribe and be part of the movement we're building. Today, we're talking about trauma, not as a label, but as a lived experience, how it shapes safety, how it affects connection, and how healing becomes possible when we are seen and supported. My guest today is Tracy Smaldino, host of Trauma Rockstars, and a guide for survivors seeking healing and self-trust. Through her work and her own story, she creates spaces where survivors are truly heard. So, guys, this is a conversation about vulnerability as strength and how connection, not isolation, becomes part of recovery. Tracy, I am so happy that you are with me. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Susan, for having me. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Well, I always love to start at the very beginning. So, talk to me about how what you went through, how it shaped you, and then how it changed the dialogue about how we need to talk about trauma.
You know, I had a pretty normal childhood upbringing until I was 11. And when I was 11, I was in a horrific car accident. I was the only survivor. And on top of the layer, like many, many injuries, I was burned on 70% of my body and lost both my cousins in the accident, and it was very very difficult to deal with that. Kids are resilient though. Adults I feel like can't handle things as much as kids do. Kids are resilient, so I think that had a lot to do with it. But with all of that, and there's many, we can go into specifics with all that, but even after all that happened and many, many years of recovery, surgeries, and things like that, when I was 15 in high school, I was just, trying to live a normal adolescent high school life. I went to a party with some friends. And like anything, you never know who's going to show up at these high school parties. You don't know what's going on. And everybody just is trying to figure out who they are and be cool and things like that. And at this party, I was drugged and gang raped by
My
several boys
God.
at,
Oh my
at
God.
15. Yeah. So it was just because I hadn't been through enough already. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's so many people that have been through way worse than I have, but for me at the time, there was so much going on in my life. Like I never told a soul about that. My accident, obviously people knew because it affected my whole family and it was all over
Sure.
the news and it was a big, big deal. But the assault was something I never told a soul about. And I literally have suppressed my trauma for years, like for over 40 years. I suppressed it. And it just started, it got to the point where, like you had said in your intro, the opportunity that it could bring for learning and growing, I never realized any of that until recently. And how going through all that had shaped me into who I am now in a positive way. I never had the emotional and mental capability to understand that. And so about 5 years ago, I started meditating. And meditation's hard. So anybody, that meditates or is thinking about meditating, they call it a practice for a reason because it's not easy and it can be very frustrating, but you just have to stick with it, but I did, and I very quickly on in my meditation journey, I started seeing some benefits for it. And all of a sudden, just this one day, I was doing a guided meditation and I just got this huge download of information. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I really have never dealt with my trauma or what I've been through. I have a lot of work to do. I don't even know who the hell I am or who I
Mm,
want to be, like what
right.
and what my purpose is, I guess. I was just floating through life. And back then, I worked in the music industry for many, many years, and hence where the name Trauma Rockstars comes from. And I worked in the industry for many years, and people that go through trauma, and this is all stuff I've learned just from over time the past few years is that they live really busy lives. People that go through trauma like to move a lot. And me, I lived in these super busy, busy cities. I worked in this big industry. It was like the perfect equation for somebody going through trauma because I never really had to deal with my issues because I was so busy with life and also not realizing that anytime you go through trauma, it completely shuts down your nervous system. I never realized that. I never was in touch with my body. I never understood like what my body was trying to explain to me. So once I really realized and that how my nervous system was completely shut down and all those serotonin and um endorphins and all those happy chemicals in your body just get shut off. So you're kinda, the whole saying, "Fake it till you make it." That's basically what I was doing, but I was never making it because I was never in touch with what my body was trying to tell me, and it'll catch up to you. So it's unfortunate that it took me so long, but it's also grateful for it that it happened, and I'm not continuing to live that vicious cycle. And it's so crazy because part of that recovery process is really you need to kind of shut the world out around you and you really just need to dig deep because there's no blame. There's no, like, even with my assault, like, I don't instill hate or blame on people. Like, I just needed to look within me. Like, what do I need to do for me at this point? And you learn so much about yourself, and some of it's not so good. Like, you learn about decisions you've made and things that maybe weren't for you and people that you would have in your life, relationships. You learn, like, why you like, had these people in your life and people that maybe weren't so kind to you and treated you well, but you tolerated it and why you tolerate it. Well, once you start your healing journey, it all starts making sense. It, like,
Sure.
starts painting a picture, and I'm like so now when I look back at experiences that I had and decisions I made and things like that, I'm like, "Oh, well, I know why now. It all makes complete sense. I was a mess." And
Right.
if you wanna, like I don't know if your listeners are spiritual, religious, whatever, but however you wanna look at it with the universe, like, everything is about energy. And
Mhm.
so now I understand, like, everything that was going on, not that I wasn't asking to be assaulted, obviously, that was a completely different situation, but all the other scenarios in my life, the decisions I made, the people I would welcome in, I understand it was because it was a reflection back of the energy that I was really feeling inside.
Right, right.
And I never, like, would have admitted many years ago that I was a mess because I thought I was fine, but I wasn't. And since I've started this healing journey, Susan, like, I am a completely different person. Like, my life has done a complete 180. I never say 360 because then you're back where you started. So I always just say my life's a complete I'm still me, but it's just so different now. And the way
Right.
I see it's like you see the world in a completely different vision.
So I
Go ahead, go ahead.
I wanna ask you because I just talked about energy yesterday with somebody, and I loved it. It's so evolved of you that you don't have any ill will towards the perpetrators. I mean, that is such a beautiful thing. Um, but I wanted to ask you when you were talking about this, the barriers that people put in their way to healing, because you said that you're a different person now.
Yeah.
So what kind of barriers did you have in place? And I have to ask because I'm so excited to hear the answer about did people fall away when your energy changed? Did all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, where are all my people?" And then you have different people. So
Okay.
many questions for you. I don't even
This
know where to
is
begin.
You're spot on because this is one thing I wanna say, like, as far as before I started my healing journey, I didn't have barriers. And one thing and that's why I would just surround myself with these people that, like, make no sense, it makes no sense to me at all. Once you start your healing journey, the number one thing you have to do is set boundaries. And so you really need to dig deep and figure out like what kind of life you want and where you're moving forward. And once you figure that out, anything that doesn't serve that is gone. So you have to become so selfish that you have to really just set these boundaries. So once it's in one part, I think a lot of times people are afraid to start, like they don't want to re traumatize themselves or they don't want to they're in denial and you have this huge wall up, you know? And that's because of fear, because you don't, it's okay though. It's part of it to be afraid to try and heal and do that. But I think that you have to face it again. You have to, because you're not going to go through it until you face it and get to the other side. But there's so many tools out there that you can do that and in a caring, loving way for yourself. And it's funny you mentioned that because once you start putting those boundaries up, it automatically changes your energy source
Mm.
within you. And people do fall off. They fall off naturally, or you just have to distance yourself because, it's not healthy for you at that time, and you can't feel guilty about that. But most of the time, I find it just happens naturally. But what that does is it opens up a door for all these new, incredible people to come into your life that is aligned with your energy now.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it's just sorry. I'm just I told you I'm just getting over an eye infection. But it really does like you and I. Well, the second we started talking, I'm like, she's one of my people, and it's just, I never would have met you, Susan. It just opens up so many doors for these amazing things to come in. And it's so 10 times worth it. And even when you're healing, you sometimes, like, there's sometimes that I feel like I'm taking 5 steps backwards because we all have bad days. I mean, we're
Sure.
human. You're gonna have but what you need to do is you need to look at that and instead of saying, "I'm having a bad day, what is this trying to teach me?"
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
turn it back on you. And I think that, even like you said, even with the assault, with what happened to me, like the statute of limitation, where in the state that happened and has run out. To me, you know what? Not a big deal because I probably at this point wouldn't try and pursue something that was and get into that anymore because I
Right.
truly believe like the universe is just working for us and life just happens. And these some of these people I have an idea who some of them are, but I'm not 100% sure because I was drugged, but like some they have families. They have children. I don't want to do that to their children, even though their fathers were, did that. To me, I'm like not worried about it because the world handles things themselves, naturally. So I don't it's not a worry to me about that. I don't need justice. I'm giving myself justice. Um, as far as my cousins passing away, I didn't realize how much that survivor's guilt was suffocating me for so many years.
Oh,
It was so and I didn't realize I even had survivor's guilt until 5 years ago. And, my cousins they didn't deserve that. And for me to, be living I owe it to them to be the best version of myself and make the best out of that situation that happened. And that's what I'm trying to do. Like, that's why I started the podcast because I'm like, if I can help one person,
right.
I'm totally happy.
I
And
feel the same way.
yeah, just one person. And, I know that, there's so many layers to my story and everything like that. But at the end of the day, trauma is trauma. And I've had people on my show that have gone through way worse than even what I had gone through that are such an inspiration.
Feel like though it doesn't really matter who went through the worst bit of
No,
trauma, because it's
it
not a
does.
competition. Because you could go through something that it might be traumatic to you, it might not be traumatic to me. It's just how we perceive it. But I wanna talk to you about courage,
Yeah.
because what I hear from you and what you're exuding is just this unbelievable amount of courage. Where did that stem from, and how do people walk into their courage, who might be listening right now, who might be still in their trauma and looking at you and say, "Gosh, I wish I was like her." How do you get there?
Well, you are like me, first of all. And the thing is dealing and you're right, like, it doesn't matter what your trauma is. It affects us all the same. It's not one size fits all, And dealing with that and facing that, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're even thinking about, "Maybe I need to start doing some work," I want you to look in the mirror and know that you're a badass. Like, you are a trauma rock star, and it takes bravery, it takes courage to do that, but you owe it to yourself. Like, you can't afford not to do it because
Mm,
the universe needs your authentic self.
yes.
They need all of you. It's really important, and what you bring to the world. And so I think that for me, when I started really like giving myself credit for the positive things and for starting this journey and everything is really when things shifted. So it really comes down to the self-talk,
Mm,
and that takes practice
yep.
and, journaling and things like that. And if you don't have a support system, you don't need a support system. You've got communities like this. But you are your own, like I always say, you need to be your own hero. And so that's why, like, what is a trauma rock star? Well, a trauma rock star is anybody that is on their healing journey, even if you're in the stages of just thinking about it, and you know that maybe it needs to happen, but even if you're not right, you're still a trauma rock star because you're already starting to think about it, and there's so many tools out there to help you do that.
I love that you're reframing it. You're reframing your thoughts, you're reframing the label that you're giving to yourself. You're reframing everything into such a positive spin to elevate people. But talk to me about some of the tools that our listeners could say, "Oh, this is an awesome tool and I'm going to take it away and I'm going to do it right now to start me." That because the first step is always the hardest, right? It's always so hard to say, "Okay," but maybe if that step isn't too traumatic, it isn't too much, if we ask them just to take that little inch. What are
And
some
it
of those tools?
Yes, and Susan, it's all little steps because, like, for me, I want people to know, like, the change for me was massive. Like, it was very massive. And because I waited so long, the longer you wait, kind of the worse it gets, kind of thing. So I waited so long. So it really was massive. But I didn't look at that huge. It's like instead of looking at this huge, like basketball size massive change, just look at a little tiny golf ball. It's all little baby steps. So, like, for me, this, my journal and meditation is where I started, and there's amazing guided meditation on YouTube for free that people can do. You can any piece of paper, you could journal in, and I was never a good journaler, but I've gotten so good at it now. And one thing, like when I first started writing in my journal, I was writing like a lot of happy things and, this and that. And my therapist, she told me the most incredible tip. She goes, "Why are you censoring your journal? You need to write. Why are you censoring your own journal? You need to write exactly what is in your mind because it needs to go from here on to paper because
You
that's."
weren't authentic with yourself.
Yes. She goes, who are you afraid that's gonna see it? And if they do, who cares?
Right,
Why are
right.
you censoring your journal?" And so she goes, "Stop doing that." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that makes no sense." Cause I'm like writing all cute things like Susan, even I was putting like stickers, you know. I mean, colors, and I'm like, why? This is supposed to be like, if you want to drop F bombs and curse
Yep,
people, this is where you put it,
the truth.
Get it off of there into here. And then the other thing she told me, which game changer, is when you're journaling, do it in a mirror. Sit in front of a mirror.
Do it in a mirror. I never
And
heard that before.
I know, game changer. And what you do is you're watching yourself in the mirror and it's like a mini therapy sesh for yourself.
Wow. Oh, I'm so gonna do that. That's so
It's
interesting.
So I'll just sit because I have a full length mirror in my bathroom. I'll just sit on my bathroom floor and I'll write and I'll like be looking at myself and all these different thoughts come to me. It's totally changed. Now
Wow.
I'm like, I never know what's gonna come out and go in here when
Feel like your channeling spirit is coming right to you, or your higher self, or
yes,
your God center,
yes.
however people like to think of it.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned higher self because when I learned about your higher self and your inner child through meditation, it changed my life. And so now when I'm meditating, I always meditate to my higher self, always. And she always comes in.
Yep.
And it's just, there's some days that it sucks. My meditation for the day sucks, but I still did it. And even if you don't have time, like sometimes I'll be so busy, I'll just do it in the shower. I'll just try and
Yeah,
meditate while I'm in the
water
shower.
is so wonderful
It
because
is.
water is so cathartic, and
Yes.
sometimes I put my hands under hot water just to
Yeah.
feel grounded and just
Yeah.
to
And it's
let all the
soothing.
tension go. Yes,
And if I
100%.
start to get tense, I'll put the heating pad on my back.
Oh.
Things like that. If I start to feel it's just like warm and cozy
Mhm.
and even though I live in Florida, it just makes me feel so I think that could be the littlest thing. And even if just do a sentence a day, just start out a sentence a day. And with the meditation, like you don't have to, there's people that meditate for hours. That's never
Yeah.
going to be me ever.
No, me either. I have a monkey brain.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. But if I can get 5, 10, 15 minutes in a day, there's some days I just, like I said, I only have time to do it while I'm in the shower. You don't have to sit with your eyes shut to meditate. You can pray, you can
Mhm.
say your prayers, you can ask you need to, but one thing you have to ask the universe for what you want. Even
And
though it,
be
even though it knows what's best
Huh?
you need to ask because the universe needs to know that you're ready for it. So, I think
Agree.
those are some, like, key things, and there's some things, like, honestly, like, I'll put in here and I'm like, "This is so silly," but I don't care because I just need to write it down um, and get it out, and then there's some things in there that I've read back some stuff on there, and I'm like, "Yeah, I needed to get that out of my brain." And, so those are the simplest things right there. Like, you don't like, therapy is really helpful for a lot of people, but I never felt talk therapy worked for me because I felt like, you go to a therapist and a year later, you're still talking about the same thing and you're talking in circles. And I'm the kind of person like, give me the tools I need. I want to work at it and, get kind of get past it fast sooner than later, because I want to move on with my life. Like now I know the life I want and I say no to anything that isn't supporting that now. And I have no problem doing that. And sometimes it drives my boyfriend crazy, but I'm like, no, uh,
Love that. I
not
love your
doing it.
strength. So I want to ask you about because I bet you there's people out there who don't even realize that what they went through is trauma. Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, especially us as women, I'm going to generalize, we're taught to smile and to move past it and to be
Good.
polite and to sit there, even like we were talking before, and just be polite and nod. And that wasn't traumatic. Just move on.
Yeah.
So, how does it manifest in people where they might be going, "Why do I keep doing this?" And somebody like you who's more knowledgeable could be saying, "Well, you're doing this because you actually went through trauma. You
Yes.
just didn't acknowledge it at the time because we were so socialized to smile and just to,
Mhm.
be a good girl."
Yeah, so for me, one thing that really catapulted my healing journey, and this isn't for everybody, so I'm not advocating for this, but this just worked for me and I knew it was going to, is I did MDMA therapy.
Okay.
So for people that aren't familiar with that, everybody's talking about mushrooms and
Mhm.
psilocybin and and that's what MDMA is basically. It's a microdose. And I went through almost a 5-hour session with my therapist
Wow.
on it. And what it did is it opened up my mind to really dig deep into my subconscious. And I didn't know what was going to come out because I don't remember my car accident. I don't remember being assaulted. So going into this, I never really knew what was going to come out, but I knew I needed it and I was ready for whatever cuz I had already done so much work. So I knew I was ready for whatever happened, and the one shocking thing that came out during that session is for me, I had to learn how to forgive myself.
Forgive
Because
yourself.
forgive myself because I went all these years suppressing my trauma, not realizing it. I wasted so much time. I guess I don't want to say wasted time, but when you live your life for 40, years not knowing who you are, what you want, you're wasting time, let's be honest. And so I did. And I had to go back and forgive myself for not just for that, for not realizing, like, how much I needed to face everything that happened and what had gone on, and for the decisions, like, we've all made bad decisions, but I had to forgive myself for some of the bad decisions that I had made in life, or some of the people I allowed in my life that I put up with a lot of crap from, you know what I mean, that I shouldn't have, like, I deserve more, and it gave me the ability to it kinda gave me the reset button,
Yep.
and
That's awesome.
what it did is like I said earlier, when you go through trauma, it shuts down all your serotonin, endorphins, all those happy chemicals in your body. And what that session did for me is it was a switch. It turned it all back on and it hasn't shut it off.
That's beautiful.
So now I can look at myself and be like, yeah, you know what? I made some really shitty decisions. I did some really I wasn't like hurting people or anything, just not understanding who you are and your worth. And now I know 100% like what my worth is and
Well, you were
what I
wounded, wounded
you're
people make
wounded.
bad decisions.
And I'm probably still gonna make bad decisions, but you need to forgive yourself because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And that's why you need to give yourself grace. And like on the cover of my journal, it says, always remember you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and loved more than you know. And that love comes from me. It doesn't
Yep.
come from anybody else. And that's what I think that's where that self-talk, really needs to come in because, we all have made bad decisions. Not a big deal. Forgive yourself, let it go, understand why you did it because of what you've been through or the cards you were dealt, or maybe, a lot of times like people going through MDMA therapy, or if you're doing mushrooms or any kind of psychedelics or things like that, some traumas come out that people don't even remember. And they've been suppressing it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I've been hanging," like, one person went through it and was hanging on to something that somebody said to them when they were 6 years old that
Oh
came
my
out
god.
that came
Wow.
out in their MDMA session, and they hadn't even realized, and they were able to release it.
Wow.
So it's incredible. So there are probably, listeners that are like, I know I'm feel stuck. Like something just feels off. I'm stuck. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. That's totally normal. It's okay you're feeling that. Just start doing some meditation. Even 1 minute. Start with 1 minute of a guided meditation and maybe start writing down a sentence. Because if you're if you feel stuck, if you feel off, you are. But you are the only person that can figure out why.
Right.
And I promise you that is so scary. It is so freaking scary to face
Oh,
that. It takes
honoring your own feelings, it's the scariest thing in the world.
It's so scary, but you can't not do it. You owe it to yourself to do it because, like I said, the world needs you and they need all of you that you can give. And the thing is you need to be like there's no other options at this point. Like, this is how I'm gonna live my life. This is what I wanna do, and, my family knows all about this journey, and obviously, the whole world knows about it now because 'cause I've got the podcast, and it's all over all different countries, but, I mean, honestly, like, I don't care because I made some shitty decisions, but you know what? I'm human.
And you
I
learned from them.
I made the decisions because of everything I had been through. It wasn't I didn't wake up and say, "Oh, I'm gonna make a whole bunch of bad decisions today." It was because my nervous system was shut down and I had no idea who I was or what I wanted or what I needed or anything. And so now the world shows me every single day what I need. And some days are boring. Some days like nothing exciting happens, and that's good. Like those quiet calm days are good. But, I think that I just want people to know you're brave, you can do it. Like, if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody has it within them to do this.
I love your story, I love your bravery. I love the fact that you're so open about your decisions, but I feel like your decisions, even though you're saying that they were bad decisions, they made you who you are today. And they made you this amazing teacher who has this platform that could
Yeah.
help and heal people. So maybe it was your journey to go through that just so that you could spread all this love and light in the world and this healing energy. But I want to talk to you about happiness because you touched on it a little bit, hence the 5 flavors of happiness.
Yes.
Um, so I want to ask you as one of our final questions, how has happiness changed for you now that you are who you are with all of this knowledge, with this beautiful spirit that I see in front of me who's so grounded and so in touch with their authentic self?
To me now, happiness isn't going out partying and, being around all these crazy people. Like I had this really big, loud life, and stuff. And that was like, I think about it now and it almost exhausts me thinking about that. Like now, I just like right now, I'm looking outside at the beautiful palm trees and just going to the beach, going for a walk, just being able to like just look at nature and how beautiful the world is that we live in, the simplest things, and being grateful for that because that's where it starts. It starts with like the little small things. And then you can really like, I want people like when you start your healing journey, like I want people to take time to celebrate their selves. Take that time if that means like I constantly I have a problem with ice cream. That's a whole nother episode. But I treat myself to ice cream a lot because to me, I'm like, that's my treat to myself. So I'm going to go get an ice cream. And that's like, it's those little things that make me so happy. And so find what that is for you, that what it is. If it's going to a movie with a friend or just going to the movie by yourself or trying a new recipe or it could be just as simple as going outside and putting your feet in the grass and
Mhm.
grounding yourself, and you'll learn that in meditation, going to the beach, stuff like that. It's just, and if you live up north where it's freezing right now and you're like it's a single digits, but just look outside and just try and find the beauty and what's out there, even though you're freezing your little butts off. But but I think once you start your healing journey, it's natural. You don't have to, like, go out of your way. You just and you do, like, the way I looked at this palm tree before 5 years ago is very different than the way I look at it now. It's just so
Sure.
much more beauty, and, like, I've got these beautiful plants in my house, like, plants make me happy and things like that. It really is the little things.
It is, and I love the fact that you say celebrate the small wins, because a lot of times I don't think we do. I think we just bypass it like, "Okay, yeah, I did that," rather than just honoring it and saying, "Wow, I did something really hard and I did it, and
Yeah.
I deserve a banana milkshake because I enjoy putting bananas in my milkshake."
Yeah, and I'm not done, like, I'm not like, my journey is n not far from over, but now that I've gotten to where I've gotten, I'm like, "What's next?" Like, I just did my first hypnotherapy session a few weeks ago. It was incredible. It was absolutely
Wow.
incredible. So, like, I'm like, now that I've got all this information and I really want to dig as deep as I can. And I'm like constantly growing and trying different things to try and just get deeper and understand myself more. And so what it's almost like kind of like an addiction a little bit now because now I'm like, oh my gosh, what's next? Like
Well, I
what's
think
the next
because
layer?
you become happier.
You become happier and you can handle it. You can handle what you can what you've already been through is the worst.
Right.
That's the worst. So, don't worry about re-traumatizing yourself. You've already done that. Now you just need to look at it different and look at what the lesson is for it.
And you become more connected.
You do.
Because you're connected to the trees, you're connected to the ocean, you're connected to that palm tree, and you actually see the connection now, and you
Yeah.
realize that we're all part of the one. Oh my god, Tracy, I could talk to you all day,
I
but I
know. Me
know we
too.
have a hard stop. So I wanna thank you so much for your time. I absolutely loved having you on. I wanna have you on again. Um, and guys, thank you so much for listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be alerted the next time one of our podcasts drops. Thanks, everybody.